This week's surveillance report is going to cover a couple pretty major iOS exploits that were found in the wild, targeting hundreds of millions of iPhones. Google has their controversial new Android sideloading crackdown, which has been developed, and we actually now see what this advanced flow looks like that they've been teasing. Instagram quietly killed end-to-end encryption in DMs, and that's something I definitely want to talk about because it means big things. But that's not even it, because Colorado has been pushing to mandate age verification at the operating system level. We have Proton in the FBI, we have FBI location data, we have Rogue AI at Meta. It is a crazy week. Welcome to the Techlore surveillance report. We have a big couple weeks here for you because we skipped last week, more on that in a second. Your essential weekly tech news. I got to get to the typical spiel. Delivering deep analysis on the latest threats to security, privacy, and digital freedom, empowering you all to reclaim control and defend your rights. It is great to be back. We were off last week recording a very big project for a work retreat for the whole week. And one of us, I will tease, it's not me, got sick. So we've been kind of playing catch up this week. And apparently in just a little over 2 weeks, I had over 150 items in my RSS feed. So if you're a Techlorian, you're supporting the podcast, you can already follow that feed. So you actually got all of the news. But for this episode, just a disclaimer, I did have to make more cuts than normal so we can keep this reasonable. And trust me, there's still plenty of crazy stories here. A lot happened in the last couple weeks. So without further ado, I want to talk about what is going on here because there are kind of two unique attacks that hit the Apple ecosystem in the last couple weeks. So the first one is called Karuna, I believe is how it's pronounced. That's how I will be pronouncing it in this episode. So we're going to have to all get used to that. To just break down what this does. It's 5 full iOS exploit chains, the most sophisticated leveraging non-public techniques and mitigation bypasses for iOS versions 13 through 17.2.1. Those 5 exploit chains that we talked about earlier includes a WebKit remote code execution. I believe that's the one from 2024 that I just talked about. We have a point authentication code bypass, a PAC bypass. We have sandbox escapes. We also have kernel privilege escalations, and we have a page protection layer bypass as well. So they said, quote, the exploits feature extensive documentation, including doc strings and comments authored in native English. The most advanced ones are using non-public exploitation techniques and mitigation bypasses. It also mentioned here directly if the lockdown mode, anti-spyware protection feature, or private browsing is active on a device, the framework actually stops. So that is a very big plus for anybody who's using these features, and is a reminder that those kinds of mitigations can be a big help here. I also really enjoy the takeaways and the advice that's shared with Bleeping Computer. It's quite similar. You guys probably hear on this podcast all the time. Now, one thing that's a bit separate, Google does have safe browsing, where they have essentially a list of domains that they're always updating to try to prevent any kind of malicious domains. So in your browsers, it's going to check the safe browsing kind of list to make sure there's nothing malicious. So even if you use Brave browser, I believe it actually still privately proxies through safe browsing as well. But they have added all the websites Google has and domains identified with this exploit kit to Google safe browsing. So if any of your browsers, I think even Firefox, you can configure to do this, or it might do it by default. So you're good if you do that. Also, iOS users should be upgrading to the latest version, right? We need to patch that stuff up. And if updating is not possible, the advice is to enable lockdown mode. So if you are definitely in a higher threat model position, you can do both of those things. So be on the latest version with lockdown mode as well. I think it's a good reminder about defense in depth and layering up your defenses, because if you just did one of these things, this attack wouldn't have really impacted you. Now, if you are curious if you were impacted by this, I do recommend installing the iVerify app. It's iVerify. Or you can use something like iMazing. I haven't personally used that, but I know they also can scan for spyware on your devices. Now, another kind of update to this story, since it originally aired, is that Apple did push out security updates that specifically target this kind of exploit chain. And so if you are watching this and you want to be completely sure, just update your device. That is always the best advice I can give for stuff like this. Now, it is quite bad timing here because just literally about a week later, there's a new attack on iPhones. It's called Dark Sword, and it specifically seems to be prevalent in the whole Russia-Ukraine situation. And yeah, it can take over devices running iOS 18. Very similar people. We had researchers at Google and iVerify and Lookout that all kind of jointly revealed this discovery. And it is important that this impacts specifically iOS 18 devices. They even say this doesn't affect the latest updated versions of iOS, but it does work against iOS devices running versions of Apple's previous OS, iOS 18, which, as of last month, still accounted for close to a quarter of iPhones. thanks to liquid glass and the unpopularity of the new updates. So that is something to think about, is that when these companies release crappy updates that people don't want to upgrade to, like Windows 11, to some people, iOS 26, and also macOS Tahoe, it actually can discourage people from having good security practices because they don't want to update for usability reasons. So it's just a good reminder that the usability of tools can directly sometimes impact the security of what people are getting. So just keep that in mind, especially when you're recommending tools to friends and family. The usability of those tools actually does matter. There's a pretty tight relationship there. So the way that this works is it's literally kind of like in movies. Like you just access a website that's going to try to hack you with Darksword, and it kind of just hacks you. It's kind of crazy. That's why these are such massive problems and why they're typically utilized in specific targets. But this one is a little bit more mainstream, which could have impacted millions of people, especially in the Ukraine area and specific other regions that seem to be targeted with this. Another layer to this one is that Darksword itself is quite open. So any other person could have gone through and seen how it works and duplicated it for any other use case. So this could, I don't know if it is, but it could potentially be utilized by different people. So this is almost a direct quote from Apple as well, which says, quote, "Keeping software up to date remains the single most important thing users can do to maintain the highest security of their Apple devices. Separately, users who enable iOS's strictest security setting known as lockdown mode are also protected," the company added. So again, it's very similar takeaways, which is why it's actually kind of good timing from a coverage perspective that both of these attacks happen at the same time. I believe iVerify also confirmed they can scan for Darksword. So if you have iVerify, you can do their spyware scanner on your device. It's free. You get about one a month. So I recommend everybody that does that. If they just want peace of mind, you're probably fine, but it's still something that you guys can all check. This isn't just an Apple issue. We see some of these things impact Android. It really depends on the week. One additional story, one extra thing to consider here. If you guys don't know, Apple has a feature called background security updates. So maybe they call it background security improvement. It's not a very clean name, but pretty much in your security settings on all of your Apple devices, for the most part, you can enable this so that you're going to get these background security improvements. And I believe this is the first one that Apple has published, and it was also this week. And so you might have seen this. Here's what it looks like if you're watching a video, but it's still iOS 26.3.1, which is the latest version at the time of recording, but now you're going to see a little parentheses A at the end of it. So that's a background security improvement. It's recommended for all users. So if you had this feature enabled, you could have just woken up and seen the update automatically take place. The one thing, though, is that Apple did not clarify, as far as I've been able to tell, exactly which issue they're patching through this. So it could be a totally unrelated issue, or maybe it could have to do with one of these attacks. We don't really know. Apple did not give a reason. I feel like Apple should give a reason. I wish Apple had better changelogs. That would be a much appreciated thing in general. In fact, I wish everybody had better changelogs. I'm so tired of opening like the App Store, the Google Play Store, and then developers just put the laziest changelogs. Or even worse, they use it for marketing. They're like, "Oh, follow us on Twitter." And it's like, dude, this is an app changelog. I want to know what you're changing. So that's all I have on that story. And now, don't worry if you're on Android. We have Android bad news as well for you. And of course, later we still have Instagram killing end-to-end encryption. We have age verification on Linux if you're laughing from Linux. So we can't laugh at each other. We're all in the same fight, guys. And of course, we have chat control as well in the defense bulletin. So let's get into the Google situation. So a little bit of context here. So I'm going to start with context, pre-context, which is Google has come forward and pretty much said, hey, we want to verify all developers who want to just publish applications away from the Play Store. So even if you're a developer and your app and your code is never going to touch the Google Play Store, traditionally, you can still publish your code on GitHub. You can publish it on third-party app stores. And then users who use those stores or get your app from those sources just sideload them. Sideloading is just a fancy way of saying installing apps away from the Play Store. So when you're installing a .exe on Windows, that's just how Windows works. When you have a DMG on Mac OS and then you have the application inside of it, that's kind of a similar thing-ish. And then you have the APK files on Android, which is the same thing. And all Android devices, for the most part, if you just load an APK file onto it, you can just install the APK. You don't need to go through Google Play Store. Google says this is for security, but it has tons of considerations regarding now Google being a gatekeeper for literally all software, even if it's not coming from the Play Store, which is a huge overreach and has some really concerning downstream effects for privacy. for freedom of information. We know Google and Apple are known to block apps if governments pressure them to do so. And so this is quite concerning from many perspectives. And I just wanted to add a little bit more context before I cover the news, which is F-Droid, the open source app store that's been pretty much at the forefront of fighting this kind of stuff because they literally can't comply with what Google's trying to do. They have added Mark. I've actually interviewed Mark on Techlore Talks if you want to listen to that interview. And he did such a good job describing the problems. But pretty much he comes forward to add a bit more context as to potentially why this is happening. So if you're not following, Epic and Google have been getting into some beef because there's a dispute over the legality of alternative app stores on Android phones. They recently settled to some extent, and now Epic has a blog that says globally developers will have choices in how they make payments with reduced fees and the ability to point users outside apps to make purchases. But here's the thing, as part of this proposal, rather than agreeing to let third-party app stores into the Play Store, Google wants them to continue to be sideloaded. So the theory here, again, this is a theory, is could developer verification be Google's fallback plan if US courts fail to approve the proposal? Quote, if the Google Play Store, and this is a quote from someone in the Keep Android Open movement. If the Google Play Store has to allow any third-party repository app store, Google essentially has given up all control of the apps. But if they're able to claw back that control by requiring that all developers, no matter how they distribute their apps, have to register with Google, have to agree to their terms and conditions, pay them money, provide identification, all those things are required to register as a developer, by the way, then they have a large degree of indirect control over any app that can be developed for the entire platform. So this is just additional context to something that we've already been talking about to just add a little bit more potential why for why Google is trying to do this stuff right now, because they're claiming it's all for security, but if it was just about security, they could do other things that would still improve the security of their platform, including keeping malware outside of the Play Store itself, because that is also a problem. So the actual news update, I know I just talked about context for however long that took. Was that 5 minutes, 10 minutes? I'm sorry. I tried to keep it as brief as possible, but it's really important stuff. So the news story here is that Google has now detailed their, quote, advanced flow that they've been teasing for a long time and have never delivered on what that actually means. First, you enable developer options by tapping the software build number in the About Phone screen 7 times. You have to do that 7 times, not 8, not 6, 7. Then in Settings, System, you open developer options and scroll down to Allow Unverified Packages. You flip that toggle and tap to confirm you are not being coerced because they're concerned that a scammer will make you do this. You then have to enter your device, PIN and password. You then have to restart your device. And then you're going, okay, cool, now I can sideload apps. Wrong, you have to wait 24 hours. So yes, you wait 24 hours. Then you can return to the unverified packages menu at the end of the security delay, scroll past additional warnings and select either allow temporarily, like 7 days, or allow indefinitely. You have to then check the box confirming you understand the risks. You can now install unverified packages on a device by tapping the Install Anyway option in the package manager. By the way, that last thing was always there, I believe, so that is not new. And there was always a warning for people when they were installing, quote, unverified apps. I mean, this is just such a bad idea for so many reasons. They kind of cite a couple of them here in Ars Technica's article, but privacy advocates have expressed concern that verification will create a database that puts independent developers at risk of legal action. Google says they push back on judicial orders for user data when they are improper, blah, blah, blah. The company further suggests it's not intending to create a permanent list of developer identities that would be vulnerable to legal demands. Yes, they're not intending to do that. They're intending to, quote, keep people more secure. But what are they getting? They're getting a database with all developers on it. So that is BS. Google's that I have no issue saying Google's just full of shit on that one. But Ars continues. They say there's also concern that developers living in sanctioned nations might be unable to verify due to the required fee. Google notes that the verification process may vary across countries and was not created specifically to bar developers in places like Cuba or Iran. We've asked for details on how Google will handle these edge cases and will update if we learn more. This is Google just really frustrating me here because they're not saying that these problems don't exist. They're not saying, yeah, there's not going to be that. No, they're just saying that wasn't their intention. So they're not even denying that those problems exist. They're just saying, well, that's not why we're doing this. But yeah, you're right. Like, that's a problem. And it's like, that doesn't change what you're doing, man. I think it's also really frustrating because this puts so much more on third-party app stores like F-Droid. So I found this post on Mastodon from Sylvia, and what was said here is pretty much quoting the advanced flow announcement from someone else on Mastodon. and just talking about how it's a little bit frustrating because this is a different process actually for every Android device. Like the way to enable developer options on a Fairphone versus a Samsung device are actually different, and the steps are a little bit different, which makes it kind of impossible for third-party app stores like F-Droid to just give clear advice on how to properly educate their users on what to do. It's actually funny. Many of you might know Izzy on Droid, which is probably the most common third-party repo that you can use on F-Droid. And then bring up a pretty interesting, ironic point here, right? Because we are doing this whole thing to keep people safe so they know they understand the risks, blah, blah, blah. But Izzy says here, quote, developer modes expose features of the mobile operating system that are not available during standard operation. An adversary may leverage a vulnerability inherent in a developer mode to compromise the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of sensitive information. Disabling developer mode mitigates this risk. So, and then they say, so this is about security, LMAO. So pretty much the point they're making here is that Google is saying that, yes, we want people to be safer and more secure. So we're going to make them go through 10 different, steps that are all BS, and it's a 24-hour wait. We're going to pretty much add all this friction just so you can install an APK outside of the Play Store. Like, just let that sink in, guys. And also, in the process of doing this, you're enabling a feature that actually exposes you up to other security concerns. Whereas the alternative beforehand is you just install F-Droid from your browser and you just start installing apps from F-Droid. You can keep developer mode off completely. So their point is that there actually are some increased security considerations as well when you have to enable something like developer mode options. Another response here on Mastodon says, it's called developer mode for good reasons. It shouldn't be used in normal occasions. Them putting any feature behind this mode is a clear sign they don't regard it as a feature that should be used at all. And I think that is such a good take. That's from Erwin, or at Odd, at mastodon.social. And I think those pretty much sum up all of my views on this, to be honest. I think this is a joke. I think Google, this is my big pet peeve. Google, if you're going to be Apple, just own up to it. Like, that is my take. If you're trying to stop third-party app stores, you're trying to stop people from running their own software, you're trying to stop people from actually running their own operating systems in the way they want to run them, just own up to it. Come forward and say, no, you know what? We're done. Android is no longer an open ecosystem. Stop being such a baby about it and doing all these little subtle things, not publishing your builds and, starting to shut down Android, starting to block sideloading, making it harder and harder for people to actually own their Android devices. You're doing all these little things while saying, oh, that our intention wasn't to do this, it's not to do that. Just own up to it. Please come forward and say what your intentions are so that people can act accordingly. And if you're not able to come forward and just be honest about it, then maybe it's because you're doing something that isn't right. So that's my take. At least Apple, you know what you're getting with Apple. When you go to the Apple store and you pay in cash, or you pay with your card, or you pay with your Apple card, you know what you're getting. You're getting a lockdown experience, and you should never expect anything otherwise. But when people bought their Pixels, they bought their Pixels because it was a clean experience, it was polished, it's a nice, clean, modern Android experience, and it always gives you that option down the road to customize it a little bit more, to install apps that you maybe can't get from the Play Store, to install a custom ROM. These things were always kind of givens when you went and people went to buy these Android devices. So the longer that Google continues with this, oh, our intention isn't this, we're open, we want to give users control. You can still get control by tapping 7 times in the settings menu when you hop and skip while you're doing it. And then you also have to call our developers and you have you have to upload your ID to them in real time. But it's, we still are putting you in control. You're still in the driver's seat. It's all this BS, man. So anyway, that's my rant. I think it's really frustrating. I don't know if any of that made sense. I'm probably going to keep that in, but yeah, I'm already 30 minutes into recording and I'm only through 2 stories and I feel like I'm already just so frustrated. So yeah, that's my take on this. If you're in the Android ecosystem, I think it's still a little bit too early to tell what to do here, but you guys need to get involved. Please go to Keep Android Open. We're going to leave it in the show notes. We leave all the sources in the show notes. So please get active. There are change.org petitions. There are direct things that you can do to help fight this stuff. You can contact your politicians nearby. It actually actually does make a difference. Please, please, please don't think it doesn't make a difference. So check out Keep Android Open. It gives you all the resources to get involved, all in the description in the show notes. So thank you all for getting involved with that. If you care about Android being an open ecosystem, you should do it. If you're on a custom ROM thinking this doesn't impact you, you need to think about the global impacts. It's not just about you. This is a societal fight. And if you only think it's about yourself, I actually don't know why you listen to this podcast. Like, this podcast is about keeping everybody safe, not just you. And so I really encourage, even if you are in a custom ROM and it doesn't impact you, you have more reason to get involved because you understand the value that that provides you day to day. So why would you not want other people to have that? All right. And now we have more craziness. So I'm going to be honest, I didn't even know this was a thing. Apparently, Instagram has had end-to-end encryption, either optionally or just by default. I think it was optional to some extent. And of course, I just want to remind people, this isn't, of course, maybe for our audience, but if you're a new person, Instagram is owned by Facebook, aka Meta. They're all the same company, same people who own WhatsApp. So they have come forward and just kind of said, yeah, we're no longer supporting end-to-end encryption in Instagram. That's it. On May 8th, if you have chats that are impacted by this change, you will see instructions on how you can download any media or messages you may want to keep. If you're on an older version of Instagram, you may also need to update the app before you can download your affected chats. So that's already the main story, and I'm not going to dive too much into it because I've already killed so much time on the first two stories, and we still have other crazy stories to get to. But I'm just going to leave you all with this Wired article. It's in the show notes. I would recommend reading the whole thing, but just the long story short here is that the Wired article talks about why this is such an important event for everybody. Meta so far has only moved to increase end-to-end encryption throughout its suite. They originally made end-to-end encryption an opt-in thing on Messenger, and they realized very few people were using it, so they actually just made it the default. So if you use Facebook Messenger, you get end-to-end encryption. WhatsApp is supposedly all end-to-end encrypted. I know there's some weird theories around that, but there still is no like hardcore evidence that it's not end-to-end encrypted. Instagram also did the weird like opt-in thing, and they saw that nobody was using it, but instead of making it the default, they just disabled it altogether. So it's seeing, it's like the first domino coming down. And Meta over the years has very much leaned into the public image of supporting end-to-end encryption because it keeps users safe, because it's a way to fight back against any kind of scanning, etc. So this is just seen as overall a concern, and it kind of shows Meta's, true intentions, which I hope people still don't think are positive in the world. But if you still think Meta is a positive company, it is a good reminder that this is another situation where it's no longer relevant to them. It was after the Cambridge Analytica scandal. It was after the 2020 scandals. It was after so many scandals, and they needed to get their public image in order. And so they started releasing more safety features for users. But now that things aren't the same anymore, they're really easily able to get rid of those. Kind of like what I just complained about with Google, it would be cool if Meta just came forward and said, hey, we are no longer intending to keep anything end-to-end encrypted. Or if they were just a little more public about Instagram, like we still intend to keep end-to-end encryption everywhere else in our ecosystem. We just don't feel like it fits with the Instagram experience or something. That would actually be really reassuring. So really what I'm asking for here is just a little bit more honesty and transparency from these companies, because I think it would really help the world kind of understand what to do. But Meta is not a transparent company unless they're leaking all of your plain text passwords in a data breach. Yes, that happened. And yes, we will cover later a story about how Meta had some AI flops and how AI just completely caused a data breach inside of Meta. That is coming later in a defense bulletin. But before then, age verification on operating systems, including Linux. I know, guys, it's a big week, and I feel like I'm all over the place, but I'm doing my best here, and hopefully it's at least somewhat entertaining to have me go everywhere. So I made a dedicated video on this on our YouTube channel. If you want a very big deep dive into it, that's where I recommend going, and I'll leave it in the show notes. But just the TLDR for this podcast. So there's been some push from both California and Colorado and a few other states for age verification at the operating system level. This means that your operating system, including Linux, there is no specific carve-out for operating systems that are open source. Literally just operating systems, period. It also could be interpreted to mean IoT devices, Linux devices, like anything has to have age verification. Once that age verification is done, then app developers from there can essentially ping the operating system to make sure you're old enough to use certain apps. I mean, this is so scary, guys. Like the repercussions for this and how any part of this infrastructure that's been created, how easily that can be weaponized for something that's totally not the intention. Like now that we're deciding which apps can be used by who, on a systemic level, that means that potentially, the next administration goes, okay, we don't want people who are in this region to access this app that can be used to protest against us. Like that is the same exact functionality. What I just described is the same functionality. Those are not different. It is the exact same thing. If I was to build that surveillance infrastructure to censor my citizens, it looks exactly like this stuff. It's just being packaged in a very different way. And even if this is their intention to keep children safe, to keep people safe, the fact of the matter is that the same infrastructure can just be turned over to somebody else who will weaponize it for something different. So that's what's happening. And Linux distributions have come forward. I'd say the main person who has actually really put their foot in the ground somewhat to say no and trying to do something about it politically is System 76. The System 76 CEO has been doing a lot of back and forth with the Colorado lawmakers, trying to not make this happen, et cetera. And we're actually going to talk about them in a second here. They even wrote a really good blog article here that was a very nice public statement. Yeah, so I'm really impressed by the leadership that System 76 has put forward, especially because they are not the largest Linux distro out there. Because System 76's CEO is pushing and actually doing something, he sees at least a possibility of Colorado's law excluding open source software. I don't know if this is going to happen, but the fact that he's in discussions with these lawmakers and doing his best to represent himself, that's how we see this law change now a little bit, or a potential for it to change. All this stuff really matters. You might be wondering why this is happening. Who's pushing this? Why? What's going on? Well, this is happening pretty globally. We're seeing this push for age verification in various places all around the world right now. It's pretty concerning stuff. And I think it's important that, these companies like Reddit, Meta, Google, Apple, they don't want to bear the burden of age verification themselves, because then they're legally liable. Then they have to deal with the technical overhead of having to roll out all this technology. But this was actually interesting. This is an article. A Reddit user has uncovered who is behind Meta's $2 billion lobbying for invasive age verification technology. Something that's really subtle about this story, the operating system level age verification, is that it is actually overall supported by big tech companies. The big tech companies don't mind the operating system basis kinds of age verification. But they have traced where this funding goes from. This is being pushed, and these big tech companies are behind a lot of it. According to the investigation, they traced funds through organizations like the Digital Childhood Alliance, the DCA, which launched in 2024 and testified in Utah just days later. Meta backed the DCA, which is part of a $70 million fragmented super PAC strategy designed to evade the FEC tracking. This is because traditional election spending disclosure requirements don't apply to this fragmented approach. This is all quite surgical because the proposed laws hammer Apple's App Store and Google Play Store with compliance requirements, but reportedly spare social media platforms, which is Meta's core business. It's like Spotify lobbying for streaming regulations that only apply to Apple Music, is what the article lists out. And I think that's a perfect analogy here. To show you how it can be done a little bit better, I'm actually against all of this right now, period, until there's a little bit more honesty about the real risks that this kind of includes. And maybe there is a way to do this that, respects everybody and doesn't have as many concerns. But as of right now, I'm against all of it because no one's having an honest discussion. The EU's digital identity wallet takes a different approach. This is from the article. Zero knowledge proofs lets you verify age without revealing personal data, like showing you're over 18 without disclosing your birth date or identity details. It's open source, self-hostable, and only applies to large platforms while exempting FOSS and small entities. Meanwhile, US lawmakers seem ready to let Meta bamboozle them into complete privacy annihilation. So I want to be clear here that I don't even necessarily know if what the EU is doing isn't also very concerning and could also be weaponized in a bad way, but this is just already a drastic improvement in the way that we're trying to do things in the US, and I think it shows that this is also from the article. Your device's trustworthiness hangs in the balance. These laws could force every Linux distribution and privacy-focused Android fork to implement identity verification or face legal liability. The choice between surveillance-free computing and regulatory compliance is coming faster than you think. Guys, this is serious stuff. So serious. I really feel like when you take time off, I'm still getting back in the flow and I feel like I'm kind of all over the place. So I'm doing my best here. Because not only is this kind of just an all over the place, tons of stories to cover and very just emotionally charged stories, but also, just coming off a week of recording a big project. I'm just all over the place. place, like not really into rhythm yet. So a little bit of more positive news. So there was a historic chat control vote in the EU Parliament, and they voted to end untargeted mass scanning of private chats. So this is good news. They've rejected the error-prone and unconstitutional surveillance practices of recent years. This is from Patrick Breyer's website, and I'm really happy to see that all of this, went over well. Obviously, this couldn't have happened without Patrick. This couldn't have happened without all of you that got involved, who contacted your politicians. Like, all of this really mattered. So I'm really glad that this is moving in a slightly better direction. The cool thing too, there's an update blog article which has a very interesting point, which is the end of chat control paving the way for genuine child protection. Pretty much his point is that now that we're not focusing on trying to roll out chat control, we can focus on real ways to actually keep children safe online. He makes the case in his blog here for security by design instead of surveillance mania, and how this is a great opportunity for us to actually focus on keeping people safer through better security and better privacy. Things that actually keep people safer. Who would have thought? Great, all good news. But, literally 7 hours ago, if you're watching on screen, it was 7 hours ago. Not a thriller, but reality. The conservatives, the EPP, want to overturn a historic vote against indiscriminate chat control on Thursday and force a new vote. This is a direct attack on democracy and privacy. And now there is another fight chat control update here on the contact tool. So, dude, following this, I actually excluded so many of the links in the show notes in my RSS feed as well. Actually, if you're following the RSS feed, you may have seen I tagged all of them in there. This changed practically on a daily basis. One day Patrick's like, everything's going to fail on Mastodon. Like, it's all going to crap. You need to get involved. We need to fight back. And then it's like, oh, wait, we won. And it's like, what? And now, like, after we won, now Patrick is like, oh, no, they're going to try to overturn the win. And so it's just so fascinating trying to follow this. So huge respect to Patrick for putting in that work. But also, it's just so confusing to a regular person, even someone who's trying to keep up with it. So just keep updated with these things. I feel like they are quite messy and they can evolve quite quickly over time. So to start off, again, I have to be really quick, guys, but Proton Mail just made it on 404. It helped FBI unmask an anonymous Stop Cop City protester. I actually think that the Freedom of the Press Foundation did a fantastic blog article that covers all of my views on this. The title is Proton Mail is not for anonymity. It says what they do, how it gives you end-to-end encrypted email, and how that's never really been shown to be compromised in any way, but they don't offer you anonymity and like full immunity from the law. That is quite literally their point. It's a good blog article. If you're still confused over what Proton does and doesn't do for you, I just refer you there. And that way I save a little time too in this recording. On a similar note, it's been shown now, if you listen to this podcast, you know this already happens. But again, these are really important to share with people because they don't know this stuff happens. That the FBI is buying location data to track U.S. citizens. Their director has confirmed it. We've known about it for a long time. Pretty much because typically this requires a warrant. If you want to track somebody's location all day, you need to have a reasonable, reason to do that. And so you have to go to a judge. A judge says, sure, yeah, that makes sense. I understand. And then you can start tracking that person's location. But the FBI has decided, and other law enforcement agencies, including ICE, including local police departments across all of the US, they don't want to go through that process. They think it's annoying. They think it's too much, whatever. But that process is there for a reason. So instead, they get around it by just buying location data from private companies who collect it. So this is the third-party SDKs in your apps. When you have Duolingo on your phone, it has 10 trackers in it. Some of those trackers can potentially, I'm using Duolingo not because I know they're doing that, but it is just really random apps on your phone that track your location and everywhere you go. And the FBI just buys that location. So they pretty much have confirmed that this happens. We knew it was happening, but it's confirmation. Check out the show notes to learn more. I should probably do a deep dive into this in its own dedicated video, so I'm just going to talk about it here. But there's federal surveillance technology that's going to become mandatory in new cars by 2027 in the US. So essentially, it needs to have like sensors and cameras to do biometric assessments of your alertness and sobriety behind the wheel. Another crazy thing, guys, trust me, I hate drunk drivers just as much as anybody else. It is messed up. It puts everybody's lives in danger. But how is this the solution to that? Does that make any sense? Just tracking everybody and what they're doing inside their cars? Think about what people do in their cars and how sensitive and discussions. That is just such an obvious problem given all of the data breaches and all of the privacy invasion that we've seen from these car companies up until now. So why are we going to give them more data that is now mandatory to collect? It's just so frustrating. So I probably should do a bit deeper dive on that in another. This one, again, I wish I could also deep dive into. There's so many of these I want to deep dive into, trust me. But there was a rogue AI that triggered a security incident at Meta. Pretty much, a Meta engineer was using an internal AI agent, which they described similar in nature to OpenClaw, to analyze a technical question another employee posted on an internal company forum. The AI gave them some bad advice, and they acted on the advice, and it led to a Severity 1 security incident, which is the second highest severity rating Meta uses. All right, 14,000 routers were infected by malware that's highly resistant to takedowns, a high concentration of ASUS routers. So if you have an ASUS router and you want to learn more about this, I would highly recommend checking out the show notes. Again, I don't have very much time today, but at least I can put it on your radar. There is an OpenClaw vulnerability. It's called Clawjacked. If you use OpenClaw or you just want to keep up with this whole AI stuff that's crazy, show notes is where it's at. WordPress admins, there was a membership plugin bug that was exploited to create admin accounts, and that vulnerability was developed by WP Everest is the plugin. So if you use anything related to that, check it out. Again, we are running on short time, so I'm going to be going through these quite quickly. If you use Cryptomator, which is how you can end-to-end encrypt files in any cloud provider like Dropbox, Google, etc., they have an important security fix that you need to take into consideration. There was some security vulnerability, and they patched that up. So check that out to learn more, and make sure to update Cryptomator. Indonesia is also exploring this. So if you're in Indonesia, definitely please read the show notes and make sure to get educated on this. Again, I just don't have very much time today, but as it develops, I'll definitely cover it more. Like most weeks, it would have been a main story, but we might also make a dedicated video. We're doing our best with limited time here. So at minimum, check it out if you're in Indonesia. We also have Samsung TVs that have are forced to stop collecting Texans' data without express consent. So that's a small win there in Texas, especially if you have a Samsung TV. If you're anybody with a smart TV considering keeping them off of the internet, if you do have to have them connected to the internet, see if you can use a custom DNS like NextDNS, which has built-in filters to block a lot of the tracking domains that these smart TVs connect to. Just a pro tip that I was able to share very quickly. Some wins as well in Florida. It's not all good. Actually, thank you for sending this along. Some of the people involved sent this along on Signal to me. But the Florida Digital Rights Association, they have a little blog here, and they pretty much recapped some of the wins and some of the still concerns that are happening over in Florida. But overall, lots of wins, and it seems like the age verification stuff in Florida has mostly, at least for now, been pushed away, but it hasn't necessarily fully gone away yet. There's still going to be more pushes going forward. LexisNexis is one of the worst companies out there in terms of data harvesting. They collect very sensitive data. They're very untransparent about it, and they had a data breach. So if you want to learn more about this data breach, I would highly recommend checking this out. And it's just embarrassing. This is why we don't need companies like this when I talk about companies I enjoy, they are the companies that want to know as little about you as possible in order to give you a good quality experience that makes your life better in some way. It's a positive relationship you're developing with a service. These companies, literally, their entire job is to be a parasite, right? Like, they collect as much data as they possibly can about you. You get no benefit from it either, because you're not even do you know who LexisNexis is? Did you ever sign up for a LexisNexis account? No, but they have your data anyway. So there is no relationship that you actively are a part of. They're just leeching off of you. It's like a mosquito that you don't know about that's just stealing your blood on your ankle. That is what LexisNexis is. I just fundamentally really dislike a lot of the stuff that these companies do. I'll leave it at that. I have to keep going. There was a data breach from a company called Navia. This impacts 2.7 million people. So if you know this service, definitely make sure to research that in the show notes. There was also a company called Marquez, Marquis, which had a data breach with over 600,000 people. So check that out if you are involved with that company. We also had Telus, Telus, which has confirmed a breach after hackers claimed a 1 petabyte data theft. So this is a Canadian business process outsourcing giant. If you are familiar with them at all, or you think that this is interesting to you, definitely check that out in the show notes. Man, I feel like I'm getting so many companies I've never heard of, nor know how to pronounce, but we have Trizetto, who has confirmed 3.4 million people's health and personal data was stolen during a breach. So this is a very important one to look into if you're involved with this company. Starbucks employees, there was a data breach affecting hundreds of you, so please check this out as well. Ericsson has disclosed a data breach after a service provider hack. This is a subsidiary of a Swedish networking and telecommunications giant, so definitely keep an eye out for that one as well. Aura, AURA, has confirmed a data breach exposing 900,000 marketing contacts And yes, this is an identity protection company. So ironic. I don't even know what this is. It looks like a game to me, but Nation States, a nation simulation game, has confirmed a data breach after unauthorized user accessed its production server and copied user data. So yeah, if you use Nation States, look into this. That's not the only game though. Star Citizen game developers also disclosed a breach affecting user data. So if you play any of these games, you need to look into those. Now, there was a lot of negative stuff the last couple weeks. I'm not going to lie. But there were also a lot of positive things too that I want to highlight, which is going to be like the update section of the the defense bulletin. So Bitwarden has added support for passkey login on Windows 11. So if you're on Windows 11 and you use Bitwarden, you can now do a passkey login. So check that out if you want to learn more. This is really relevant for our Signal group and our little Signal group, which is for Techlorians. If you want to support this podcast and gain a cool little community, we have labels now on Signal in groups. So I like set mine to be like admin. And I saw other people link like their like blogs and stuff in our Signal group. So this is a really cool new feature. So it's going to make our group even better, but any group that you're in on Signal, even with family and stuff, this could be a fun thing to play with. And it's just a little label next to your username. So everybody can see a little label, and it's per group, just so you know. So I don't think it's system wide as far as I know. I was really excited about that Signal update. I've been waiting for that for a long time. This one is very preliminary. I've been very careful talking about this because there's been literally, it's all rumors, and I don't like covering things that are unconfirmed. But Motorola has come forward to confirm that graphene support is coming for a future phone. With that said, there's still no information. Like they haven't said what the phone's going to look like. They haven't said, I don't think there's a date for this. It seems to be pretty vague right now. So I'm going to wait for more details to come to light for us to actually dive a little bit more into this. But the concept seems pretty cool. We have Tails 7.5 that was released, which updates some basic things. I don't think any like crazy big updates, but check it out if you use Tails. Just a quick little signal boost that Mulvad did do a security audit of their new like WireGuard implementation, which is Godaton, I think is how you say it. I don't know how they pronounce it, but they did do an audit. So if you want to learn about the audit and read it yourself, that is out there on their blog. Tor has released RD 2.1, which is their Rust implementation of Tor. So if you want to keep up with that, there is a big update there. Firefox 149 is going to offer a free built-in VPN, split views, tab notes, and optional AI windows. So this is pretty fascinating stuff. If you guys do have any questions about the AI features, I actually am going to have one of the AI people on the Firefox team on the Techlore Talks. So I'm going to ask them like, hey, like, why are you guys doing this? Like, what's the pro for users? What are the cons for users? Like, which users should consider this? Like, tell me about the opt-outs, etc. So if you guys want me to ask more about these AI features, let me know what questions you have, and I might go ahead and ask some of those in the interview too, because I'm also curious about these things. The free VPN, I haven't done any digging into yet, but I think it's a very interesting concept. So I'm open to this. This could be a really cool thing. There actually were a lot of Firefox updates the last couple weeks. The next one is that they released Kit officially, which is their new companion. So it's kind of like, I think it's actually very fitting as like, you know, Proton has Luma, which is a cat. And Kit kind of reminds me of that a little bit. It's a cute little like mascot. So now you're going to see this little Kit mascot probably a lot more in Firefox's marketing, which is pretty cool. Another Firefox update is they did this really cool blog actually, because Anthropic via Claude released this security feature that can pretty much scan for vulnerabilities. And so Firefox did this like really cool blog article talking about some extra hardening they were able to do in Firefox due to like Anthropic's red team that was able to, try to break into things. I guess to clarify something I said, Anthropic's Frontier Red Team, so their red team, the cybersecurity red team, approached Mozilla/Firefox with results from a new AI-assisted vulnerability detection method that surfaced more than a dozen. So I guess I should have been a bit clearer there. This isn't like a new thing Firefox did on their own code. Anthropic's team themselves came forward to help out Firefox with something they found. So that's pretty cool. Okay, GNOME 50 has rolled out with parental controls, accessibility upgrades, and performance boosts. So if you use GNOME, check that out to learn more. The self-hosted photo manager Immich, IMMICH, got version 2.6 that improves the map side panel, asset viewer, shared link slugs and presets, and a lot more. So if you use this It's actually from Fudo, which does a lot of good stuff, and I really like the stuff they're doing. So really cool to see those updates. PeerTube hits version 8.1, which adds better podcast support, which I think will fix the issues because we're on PeerTube, guys, Techlore.tv, so you can listen to everything on our PeerTube. You can watch everything on PeerTube. We are still troubleshooting things. Self-hosting PeerTube is a pain in the ass. I'm just going to say that very bluntly. And there are lots of weird quirks behind the scenes. I can't even share some of them because the way that we do things to like import from YouTube, I don't even know if we're supposed to be doing them. But there's just a lot of weird quirks behind the scenes. A lot of times what we do to try to get around YouTube's restrictions can break our federation. So if you've subscribed to us on Techlore.tv before, you might have lost that subscription. I don't know. Federation is so easy to break. It's so finicky. This is all to say, though, a lot of you did report that when you tried to import, because you can actually create an RSS feed from a channel on PeerTube, which you can do for us, and you can import that into like a podcast. So you can just listen to all of our videos and surveillance reports all from the same place via an RSS feed in your podcast client. But it wasn't apparently working, and I couldn't troubleshoot anything that was wrong on our end. So it hopefully this new update will fix that. I haven't tested it yet though, but they do a lot of other cool things. But yeah, really cool update. And I don't know if we're running on it yet. If we're not, we should be running on it soon. I need to check if it automatically updated or not. EOS is the custom ROM, and they've released version 3.5 with a Lineage OS 22.2 base, WebAssembly support, and Fairphone 6 upgrades. So if you use EOS, make sure to get yourself updated. NotesNook, the open source end-to-end encrypted notes provider, has hit version 3.3.9, which has a lot of fun improvements. Fedora 44 beta has debuted with Linux 6.19 kernel, GNOME 50, which I just talked about, KDE Plasma 6.6, and many installer updates. So if you use Fedora, go ahead and check that out too. And on that note, this one I'm quite excited for. Fedora Asahi Remix has hit version 43, which adds more Apple Silicon Mac support and RPM 6.0. If you're not familiar, Fedora Asahi Remix is literally Fedora for Mac OS. You can literally install Fedora on your MacBook, and it will like live alongside Mac OS. If you haven't tested it, it actually works really well. I have a machine I've been testing it out on. Luckily, I still have an M1 machine that I can test this out on. But yeah, they now have support for some M2 devices. It would be cool to see more support for even newer devices, but that's kind of why this is such a big deal. We finally have newer devices that are supported by Fedora Asahi Remix. It's a really cool project, so I really recommend checking it out. OpenWRT 25.12 has been announced with APK package manager, revamped upgrade process, and it preserves shell history as well. And finally, this is the last thing I wanted to share, and it's a fun way to end the week. And it's actually another video that you are required to watch. This is not optional, people. Like if you don't watch this video, you're doing yourself and everybody around you a disservice. Like I'm being super legit here. So Norway's Consumer Council has called for right to repair and antitrust enforcement. So they pretty much are going forward. Like digital services are getting worse. It doesn't have to be this way. We need stronger rights for consumers to control, adapt, repair, and alter their products. We need interoperability. We need better financing of initiatives. We need to reduce dependence on big tech. All the good things that we fight for here too. But part of this was a funny 4-minute video on YouTube.
The official title is Certificator.
So this is a whole 4-minute video. It is excellent. I mean, I was laughing my ass off, so it's funny for me. But, oh, sorry, I wasn't even sharing the tab. So I just shared the tab now so you can see it on video. But you all of you heard it. And the idea here is like you follow this person whose job is like, I'm an enshittificator. And it just shows like all the things that he tries to do to make things.
I come from a long, my father was an enshittificator.
But pretty much, you know, it does eventually tie into the digital world, and it shows you like all these things that these companies are doing to enshittify. So this is an excellent video, and I am just absolutely in love with this. Like this is just excellent stuff. If you haven't seen this yet, you are missing out if you don't watch it. And I think you should share with everybody in your life because it's very applicable and accessible to just regular people. Even grandmas, grandpas will like this as well. All right. I feel like I was really rambly this week. I don't know what I decided to cut out or what I kept in. But actually, the recording session was 1 hour and 20 minutes, which is maybe like 15 minutes more than normal. So maybe with some cutting, this won't be grossly too long. But that does conclude this week's surveillance report. If this analysis helped you reclaim control, please become a Techlorian by visiting the link in the show notes, and you can get involved, help support this podcast, help keep us growing and reaching more and more people. You'll also gain access to our exclusive communities and get key perks along the way, all while keeping us growing. So yeah, if you don't want to do that, you can also take a moment to leave a rating. That also helps. You can also share the episode with people you know. Ratings really do make a difference. So that can be a like on YouTube, that can be stars on Apple Podcasts. I also now see you can leave like comments and stuff. So any engagement is good. Like on Spotify, I think you can leave comments. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for putting up with my rambling today. I know I'm a little scattered, but I'll see you all in the next episode next week as we're slowly getting back into the swing of things here. So thank you all for your time and for listening.